All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show. Welcome to A Deeper PTE. I am your host, PTE, also known as Permission to Exist. And today is Wednesday, May 25th, 2022, and it's about 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where I am. Good to see you guys all in the chat. Good to have you back. For those of you who may have missed it, I did do a show on Odyssey this morning, a haircut update, the first in like 2 months. So, those of you who used to tune in for those over here, you can check out the most recent episode over there on the Odyssey channel, and you can find your way to it using the link tree in the description box down below. So, welcome everyone to the show. So good to have you. I said I wanted to get into the habit of thanking those of you who do actively support the channel. So, thank you to all of my patrons who are over on Patreon. Patreon is just a support layer right now until I can develop custom content, which God only knows when that would happen. Thank you to those of you who hit me up on Cash App, Super Chat, Super Thanks when it does appear, whenever it does appear, and the most free option, which is liking the video, commenting, and subscribing to the channel. So thank you to everyone who supports in any way that you do. It's highly appreciated and much needed because you know how it is over here. You know how YouTube does us. YouTube does us kind of dirty. But anyway, welcome. Welcome. Yeah, I'm not entirely sure how, bless you, baby, how Odyssey works, but it is there. So it doesn't work quite like YouTube yet, but hopefully one day it will. So, welcome everyone. Welcome to the show. Got a pretty serious topic to discuss tonight. And I debated whether or not to actually put this on Permission to Exist, but I decided to put it over here because I just wanted to go more in depth on some things. And that's kind of the purpose of this channel. And yeah, so that's why we're over here discussing this topic. But this absolutely could have qualified as one of the installments of the Sick and Dangerous Men series, which I do have an installment coming up. And I will probably do that either tomorrow or Friday, one or the other. So tonight we are discussing the recent incident involving the school, the elementary school in Texas. I'm going to try to watch what I say and try to watch my words, but I think I'm going to have to actually use that word eventually. So it is what it is. But we're going to be discussing that and discussing also a little bit about what happened in Buffalo and the common denominator that is tying these two events together. So, as usual, and in usual style and in usual fashion, the conversation online has degraded into two camps. And typically, after events like this, you have one camp. Yeah, I'm going to have to use the word. So, you have one camp calling for gun control. And then you typically have another camp calling for thoughts and prayers and a focus on mental health or something to that effect. And the conversation downgrades and it degrades and evolves into an argument until everybody forgets about it until the next incident. And there will be another incident. This will continue to happen until we are ready to face the truth regarding what's actually taking place here. And it's something I only rarely hear come up in conversations online, and especially from talking heads. They're not going to bring it up. Nobody really wants to address the real issue. But the real issue and the common denominator affecting most of these incidents involving firearms is they are almost always young men. Now, the New York City subway shooter was not a young man. I believe he was in his 50s or something like that. But when they're not in their 50s, they're typically young men, young, angry men. And nobody wants to talk about that. Everybody wants to talk about mental health. Other people want to talk about gun control. But no one wants to ask the question, why are so many young men acting out in this way. And that is the issue that we are going to discuss tonight. There's a serious problem affecting the men in our society. I've been saying that for years, and I've been saying that since I started the YouTube channel Permission to Exist. There's something wrong. There's something going wrong, very wrong. And it gets in their mind and it affects them so deeply that they act out and they do things like what we've seen recently this week. So, we're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk about some of the causes, and we're going to talk about what the real issue actually is. So, first, what I want to share with you is an article that actually came out today. And this article came out in our favorite publication, the Huffington Post. And um, although I don't have a critique this particular evening, but typically I do have critiques for the Huffington Post. This came out around 5 o'clock Eastern Standard Time today. Mike Lee wonders if fatherlessness is behind mass shootings. It says, every time one of these tragedies occurs, we fail to look back at the root causes of rampage violence, said the GOP senator. Senator Mike Lee, a Republican from Utah, wondered aloud Wednesday whether fatherlessness is driving young men to get guns and kill lots of innocent people. Every time one of these tragedies occurs, I think we, for far too long, fail to look back at the root causes of rampage violence, Lee said during a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing, referring to Tuesday's mass shooting at a Texas elementary school that left 19 children and 2 teachers dead. Questions involving things like, why is our culture suddenly producing so many young men who want to murder innocent people? Now, there's a good question. That's good. That's a good question, Mike. Why is our culture suddenly producing so many young men who want to murder innocent people? It raises questions like, could things like fatherlessness, the breakdown of families, isolation from civil society, or the glorification of violence be contributing factors? Mike, you almost had it. You were so close, Mike. You were close. His thought process started off pretty solid. Why is our culture suddenly producing so many young men who want to murder innocent people? That is a good question. But then he drops the ball. It raises questions like, could things like fatherlessness, the breakdown of families, isolation from civil society, or the glorification of violence be contributing factors? The idea that mass shooters hail from fatherless homes and that is a reason why they turn to gun violence has been floated for years by conservatives, and it is simply false. There are no studies that clearly support a connection between fatherlessness and a tendency toward gun violence. And while details are still emerging about the 18-year-old male Texas shooter, the mass shooting in Buffalo last week was carried out by another 18-year-old male who had a mother and a father. It's not a big mystery. Let's see. Do I want to read the rest of this? Let me see. Nah, not really. Let me just see if there's anything else I wanted out of here. Okay. That's pretty much the main idea of this article. I'll grab it for y'all here if you want it. Copy link, and I'll drop it on the chat right now if you want to read the rest, because it just kind of starts discussing like the different camps. It's not relevant to what we're discussing tonight. So obviously, people on his side agree with him and people on the other side do not. Obviously, I'm one who does not agree that fatherlessness is behind mass shootings, especially when you have so many examples of people and young men who've committed violent crimes who had both parents. I didn't hit send. Let me hit send over here so y'all can have that. Who had both parents. Like, how many times have we heard about a son or 2 sons taking out both of their parents? I can't remember what was the who were the boys? I can't remember their names, but if I heard the name, I would know it instantly. But they basically took out both of their parents. So there goes that argument. And I actually have started a list of articles that I found, and I actually called that list Father in the Home. And I've been keeping it, and I'm not going to share it tonight. I was actually working on it for some other content. Let's see here. Where is it? Father in the Home, right here. Boom. Like, I have several examples of primarily men who've committed violent crimes, but their father was in the home, though. Father was in the home. So, so there goes that argument. But it's an argument they love to reach for. And this is actually not the topic of tonight's whole show. I'm just starting the show off with this to kind of give you an idea of what the discussion is out in general society as people try to nail down the cause of this. But I wanted to address the Menendez brothers. Thank you. That's exactly who it was. So they had mom and dad. So there goes that argument. But they seem to believe, well, they make several assumptions. And again, the whole entire show is not about this fatherlessness argument. I'm saving that whole thing for a completely separate show. Just starting the show off this way, I wanted to debunk it because not only is it not the reason, this excuse makes several assumptions. And I've been wanting to talk about this for a long time. Number one, it assumes the father is still alive somewhere, that he's alive and he's just not in the home. Obviously, they're going to say because the woman put him out. You're assuming the man is alive. How do you know their dad didn't die? And in the situations where children are raised by their mother, how do you know their dad didn't die? You know, people die in car accidents all the time. And I saw another great example. They said they were calling out the senator. They were like, well, do you know how many fathers got sent over to war and died in some of these crazy wars that America has either backed or started or whatever? You sent a lot of children's fathers overseas to die. So they instantly became fatherless children. So are they all going to grow up to become mass shooters? All of them? So there's that. But you're assuming the father is still alive. There's one. You're assuming the father actually wants to be there. Anytime I hear the fatherlessness argument, because trust me, it's all we hear coming out of the manosphere, even though they are the ones who create they are the fathers who create the fatherless homes. You assume the man actually wants to be there. You assume he's somewhere across town, calling every day, just trying to get back home to his wife and kids. You assume he actually wants to be there. You assume that he didn't go out for milk and just not come back. You assume that he didn't run off with another woman. Some people just leave their lives behind and just go start new lives. It happens all the time. Well, I don't know if it still happens, but I know it used to happen. People would just leave and just never come back. And sometimes people would think something had happened to them and they had just gone across the country and started a new life. But the biggest assumption that they're making is that the presence of a father means that that father is a great person and an amazing influence over the children. It makes the assumption that men don't struggle with different addiction issues, that men don't struggle with different issues relating to domestic violence and things of that nature. It basically assumes that all men are perfect and the presence of a male is going to bring perfection into your life. And there are just too many examples of that not being true that we cannot continue to uphold and make this argument. But they're simpletons though. And we'll talk about that. It really is a separate show, but it's just an example of the simple, shallow logic that is exercised and inflicted upon us on a daily basis. And this would also be an example of why I don't identify as a Republican. Many of you know I've been on somewhat of a political journey over the past couple of years, always voted Democrat, always identified as Democrat. But I've seen some things in the past few years that have made me go, Yeah, I don't think that's me. But I'm also not a Republican, and this would be the reason why. They tend to think in extremely simplistic terms, and this would be an example of one of them. Although the Republicans are not the only ones guilty of this, a lot of men who think they're liberals think this way, but a lot of Republicans hold tight to this whole fatherlessness thing. And on top of that, here's the other issue with bringing up fatherless homes as an argument. It has already happened. So the only fatherless homes that you can truly prevent are those homes that have not been created yet. Meaning you would have to convince young men to get married. Now I see why they got them married around 18 and 19 back in the day. Now I see why. Like that's why they would marry them off early. And some people will say, no, it's because of the wars. And times were just different back then. And all of that is true. But I believe they got them married young, honey, because if you don't marry these boys young, they lose their mind. They literally grow up to kind of lose their mind a little bit. So you have to kind of convince them of the family life when they are young and get them invested in it when they're young, because if they wander out into that world, that's it, they're gone. They're for the streets, okay? So, but as I was saying, the issue is when you make the argument, this is because of fatherless homes, you're making an argument about something that has already taken place. It already happened. If the kid is 18 and he grew up without his father, well, it's kind of too late now. Do you see what I mean? So it's like they're arguing and advocating for it as if it can be fixed today. It's already too late. Like a child that has grown up without their father has officially grown up without their father. Now, if their father chooses to come into their life later, assuming he's alive and assuming he wants to be there, okay, you might be able to instill some values, but probably not. That child has kind of formed already. So you're making an argument for something that has already taken place. It's a past tense thing. The event has occurred in the past. It's too late now. So you basically, what I'm trying to say is you're arguing for something that cannot be fixed. The only thing you can do is prevent future fatherless homes. But even then, you're going to end up with situations where sometimes the man won't be there. Sometimes he will die. Sometimes he will leave. And what about this scenario? What about the father that's like a longshoreman? Those guys who get on boats and they're gone for months at a time. He's not there. What about the military man who gets deployed and is gone away from his family for months or even years at a time? He's a father, he's married to his wife, he has children, but he's not there either. Physically there. He might FaceTime, he might do all that, but he's still not there. So it's just the most ridiculous argument. And I'm going to stop myself while I'm ahead because I'll end up doing that whole show right now. But it is the most ridiculous argument. It's something that has already occurred. So all you can do is try to convince people or try to talk people into the family life. But what about situations where a husband and wife divorced? The father moved on, remarried, started a new family, but the mom never did. So she's technically a single mother now, but they have a father, but he's already in a home with another set of kids in a family. So what about that? Does that count as a fatherless home? Like, do you see what I mean? So let me stop before I do the whole show. Chat says all arguments refer to past tense things. You look at the past to prepare for the future. Sure, but with this particular case, it's kind of like arguing over spilt milk, basically. Like you're arguing over something that has already occurred. So if there's a giant generation of kids, and in particular young men walking around without their father, that has already happened. So what are you going to do about what has already happened? Not what you wish would have happened. What has already happened. See, the problem with this particular group in particular is they are filled with wishful thinking and fantasy thinking. And in their fantasy, everyone gets married, everyone has kids, and everyone is a happy little family living in their little happy family bubble. That's all nice and wonderful, but it's wishful, it's not real. So it's kind of like you can't keep arguing over something that has already happened. Like it happened. So all you can do now is figure out what you're going to do with the end result of what has already happened and try to convince people who would be, I assume, young people to get married, have kids. Why don't you incentivize it? Incentivize marriage, incentivize child rearing and childbirth and all that. But of course, that's asking for far too much. You can't keep arguing over what has already happened. The baby has already been born. The dad is already gone. Now what? You see what I mean? That is one of your most powerful questions. Chat says you can't reverse time. I agree. That is your most powerful question when dealing with people who like to make ridiculous arguments. You say, okay, now what? Now what do we do? Because they would very much love to dwell on the past and in the past because the past cannot be changed. So that's where they lay their argument in the past because you can't do anything about what has already happened. You can only do something about the present and the future, but they don't want to come present and they don't want to go to the future. That's why you force them by saying, okay, now what? Yes, yes. Single mothers. Yes, yes. Fatherless homes. Yes, yes. Now what do we do? Now what do we do with all the kids that were born to fatherless homes? Now what do we do? Do we just lock them up? We just round them up and get them out of here or what? Now what do we do? Okay. So the chat says, so let's not talk about it. You are talking things that already happen now and coming up with ideas for the future. I think you're missing my point intentionally. I think you're being intentionally obtuse. My point is that they rest their argument in the past. They don't want to talk about the present and they don't want to talk about the future. All they want to do is discuss what has already happened. But they don't want to discuss, okay, let me ask you then. Now what do we do? Miss G, now what do we do? So the kids are fatherless homes, single mothers. Now what do we do? I'll wait. I'm waiting, honey. Now what do we do? The children have been born. They were raised without fathers. Now what? What do we do with the fatherless kids? What do we do? That's pretty much what I thought. So allow me to continue. This entire topic we will be discussing at another time on another day because we do need to talk about it. We do not, okay. So now we do nothing. So if we do nothing, then why keep bringing it up? It's silly to dwell in the past, but refuse to have the future conversation. So let me continue because I'm getting off track. So again, I'm just opening the show with this topic because a senator spoke on it. And I wanted to discuss this whole fatherlessness issue because, again, you're talking about something, A, also that you have no control over, and B, it's already happened. So what do we do now? So there's that. Again, it assumes the father's still alive, assumes the father wants to be there, assumes all fathers are great parents and great people, and that all of those things are true at the same time. And therefore, it must be the woman's fault that the father's not there. It's the silliest argument ever, but it comes up all the time. So let's continue. Now that we've reviewed that article, and you can kind of get into the mindset of what people are saying and what people are advocating for in regard to how and why this happened. So that's pretty much it for the visuals. So for my listening audience, you don't have to worry about me putting anything else up on the screen, because we're just going to be talking through the rest of this. Okay. I'm not trying to be mean, but I can tell that you're bucking up against what I'm saying. And it's not that you can't disagree with me, but what I'm saying is, do you see my point though? My point is, it's ridiculous to keep saying, well, all these single parent homes, all these single mothers raising kids. It's the father came out of the house. The father's not in the home. Okay. Father's not in the home. You going to force him back in there? Are you going to force him back? Do you know that he even wants to be there? There's so many contingencies to this argument. There are so many layers that are often ignored. Is he even alive? Is he alive? Is he free? I should have thrown that one in there too. Like, is he like a free citizen, or is he locked up? Is he alive? Is he free? Does he want to be with that woman and those kids? And is he a person who even needs to be around children? Chat says pushing tradition instead of pushing substantive, realistic solutions. I agree. And that's the point. They're clinging to tradition, which I have nothing against tradition. Again, I always thought I would end up in a traditional situation. I thought I would end up married with kids, and still might. I still got a few years in there to pump out a few. I severely doubt it. I wouldn't put money on it. I wouldn't put money on that happening, but it still could happen. Stranger things have happened. So I've always seen myself in a traditional situation. I have nothing against tradition, but I'm also very realistic. It's okay. Maybe I need to go reread the chat. Maybe I caught your comments too late in the chat. Okay. So I apologize if you feel like I was being mean. Maybe I was being mean. So I apologize to you. But it's very frustrating for me because this is all I ever hear all day. Y'all know I spend a lot of time in different places. And anytime something happens that a man does, the first thing they say is, well, ain't no father in the home. Man, his father should have been there. And sometimes his dad is right there. So that's why I get very testy about this issue, because I'm actually really tired of people not understanding all the nuances to it. So we'll talk. We'll talk more, and we will do a separate show on this issue, okay? But so there's that. They think it's because fathers aren't in the home. So now let's get into let's get into the real reasons why this keeps occurring, why we keep seeing this mass violence primarily committed by young men primarily. And that, of course, is not to say that women don't commit crimes and commit violent acts, because they do. And of course, it's not to say that all men are going to up and go do something like this someday, because I promise you, if they were going to, they would have by now. So obviously, we're not talking about all men. We're talking about a very specific breed who we've been discussing on primarily on Permission to Exist, but on this channel as well. I couldn't agree more. The chat says sometimes fathers are the worst possible influences. Man, maybe I should just make it that show, because I have so much to say. Oh man. I just want to say this one point to that point that you just made. One of the complaints that comes out of the Manosphere often is they say women are too masculine these days, right? They say women are very, very masculine. And I am dying to ask one of them, what about the girls who were actually raised by their fathers, or whose fathers were the primary influence in their life? Like, some girls were kind of sort of raised by their dad. So the mom usually is there, but the girl just clings to her father and he raises her. And I think men just have a tendency to treat all children like boys. And I don't know why that is, but I think it's just what men do. Like, they just can't help it. So they kind of raise you to think like a man in a way. They raise you to kind of see the world through a man's eyes. Like they failed to bring up all of the women who are actually kind of raised by their dad and who she looks up to and wants to be like. And sometimes she even gets his mannerisms and like adopts his like ways, if that makes sense. So what about those girls? You say there's no fathers in the home. She had her father in the home and he basically raised her. Now you say she's too masculine. Very sick, confused bunch. So, but I'm dying to ask one of them that. What about the girls who were raised by men? What about those girls? And who essentially kind of grow up to be tomboys in a way. Not all girls who are raised by men grow up to be tomboys, but as a result of their fatherly influence, they grow up to be tomboys. But to the original comment, sometimes fathers are the worst possible influences. Like there are so many dads. Like I know everyone in my chat won't know who this is, but there's a rapper named Boosie. And Boosie decided that he wanted to make sure his son liked women. So he hired some strippers to come strip for, I think maybe, I don't know how old his son was. I'm hoping he was at least 18, but I'm estimating his kid was probably like 16 or 17. But please don't quote me on that. I don't know that for a fact. I just know he's a very young man, very young, not even 19 or 20 yet. And because his dad is so worried that his boy might go out there and like boys, he hired grown adult female strippers. And I think that they're wrong too for what they did because, all money is not good money. But they went and they danced on, whatever. I don't want to say too much for the algorithm, but like, what a horrible influence. Like, thanks, dad. Thanks a lot. Like, it happens all the time. Men giving their son something to drink because they want to put hair on their chest, giving their son something to smoke because, men smoke, taking their son to the strip club, teaching them how to objectify women and things of that nature. And even when they're not going to the strip club, sometimes just installing his logic into his boy and basically raising another nightmare, basically. I know you guys heard about the case of Lily Peters, the young woman who unfortunately lost her life to her cousin. She was 10, he was 14. Well, turns out his father is a convicted PEDO file. Convicted. So, and I think serving time right now. So, like father, like son, huh? But father was in the home for a little while until he got locked up. So, yeah, this assumption that all fathers are these amazing people and their simple presence can bring a child into order is simply not true. But we'll talk about it. We'll discuss it because I think it's important for us to discuss that. Now, let's get into the real reasons behind all of these mass shootings. Sure, it could be argued it's the access to guns. Sure, it could be argued that it's mental health. But I'm going to tell you what I believe to be the real reasons this keeps happening. Number one, I personally believe that men are more gullible, more impressionable, more suggestible, and more naive than women. I really do. For years, the picture has been painted that women are the naive, gullible, trusting ones, and sure, to some extent. But I also think a lot of women have a certain instinct that can't be named, described, or explained. And I really believe men largely are lacking that a lot of times. I really believe men are more prone to influences than women. I really, really believe that in all my heart and soul. So, with that, susceptibility means that pretty much anything you put in front of them, they're going to absorb it and kind of adopt it. So, if it were ethical, if it were an ethical thing to do, I believe you could take some newborn baby boys, raise one of them around like trucks and power wheels and all that. Take another one and raise him around like hunting stuff. Raise him around hunting gear and hunting, all things hunting. Take another one, raise him around boats and boating and things like that. Take another one, raise him around sports. And whatever they're raised around is what they will become. Now, some would say, well, duh, PTE, like people pick up on their influences. But what I'm saying is they're highly programmable. They're highly, highly, highly programmable, very easily able to be programmed, which is why I believe they take to video games the way that they do. Now, when I was younger, girls and boys played video games, and I know a lot of girls are in the gaming community today, but at large, it's dominated by men. And I believe that is because men have this thing that allows them to get sucked in completely, like sucked in 100%. So you sit them down in front of that video game for the first time, that's it. He's lost forever. They say that those boys can sit in those chairs for 8 hours. Sometimes they won't eat, they won't sleep. And so they'll go sleep for like 2 or 3 hours, get right back up and start playing again. Sometimes they'll neglect their schoolwork. So I'm not talking really about the video games. I'm really speaking on their ability to get pulled into something completely. The same thing happened with prawn. Oh yeah, I loved Mario Brothers and Super Mario Kart when I was little. Loved it. Yeah, it's an addiction, very addicting. So they have personalities that are very, very prone to addiction. And to me, in my opinion, when you have a personality like that, it's very, very easy to cult you up. Very easy. And that's going to be one of the first reasons that I believe this keeps happening to young men. They are just so susceptible. It's almost like their minds are wide open, wide open. And most of them want to belong to something, which again, that's a human trait. We want to feel like we're part of something, like we belong somewhere, like we have a clan, a tribe, whatever. But their need for belonging is different than ours, which is why I believe historically and traditionally the man has proposed marriage. Typically, the woman does not propose. Why? Because it's the man who needs it more. It's the man who needs that community more. He needs that community feeling. He needs that tribe feeling. He needs to know I got my woman here and I got my kids here and this is my tribe. He needs it. Whereas a woman, I mean, we fall into that phase where we want to be married and all this and that. But if you let us fall out of that phase, honey, we will be just as content and happy living life alone, in spite of what they would have you to believe. It's almost the best kept secret. But women, I think, do better on their own. We actually thrive on our own. Like we're okay. And nature even kind of mimics that. Like, with the exception of, I think, penguins, some doves, lions, and I'm sure there's a few other animal species, seahorses maybe. All other animals in the animal kingdom raise their babies alone, honey, alone, and look pretty happy doing it too. It's men who feel loneliness the heaviest. Men feel loneliness the deepest. And, if you want to go biblical, even the Bible says it's not good for man to be alone. Now, some people interpret that as human beings, like it's not good for human beings to be alone. But I believe it's quite literal. It's not good for man to be alone. Facts. It says it's rare to find a strong minded, independent thinking man. It truly is. They are easily manipulated. Oh man, I got to display that one. Like, honestly, I feel like this is what I'm looking for. If I were to get married, he would have to be strong minded, an independent thinker, and not easily manipulated. And I may have even said that before on a show I did on Permission to Exist called What Am I Looking For in a Man? It was a live stream. I may have mentioned the whole manipulation thing. Like, I don't want a man who I did say this. I said, I don't want a man who comes home with some new scam that someone sold him at work today. Like, they spent 15 minutes at his desk and now he's in my face like, babe, all right, check it out, babe. Babe, okay, look, we got to do this. Yeah, we got to put down $5,000, but we'll get it all back, babe. I'm like, no, we're not doing that. It's a scam. It's not a scam, babe. You got to believe. Like, for example, when I think of like businesses and investors and things like that, and I see some of these businesses that they prop up and get all this investment capital flooded into them, and the business is clearly trash, what I have come to realize is they're usually sitting in a room full of men, and men, I believe, are very easily snowed. They are snowed, you guys, a good majority of them. So all these investors with all this money sometimes can't see a scam coming from a mile away, or they cannot tell when they're being lied to or patronized. It's almost like they can't hear it. Like, if you just say the right words to them, they're hooked and they're in there and they're locked in. Like, yeah, yeah, it sounds great. Yeah, 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 sounds great. Show them some flashy things on a PowerPoint, talk really, really, really fast, and boom, you got them. Here's $1 million check. They want to feel important. They want to belong. They want to be part of the project, you know, and boom, you got them hook, line, and sinker. Whereas there's a woman sitting in the room going, this man is lying. He's a liar. Y'all don't see that he's lying? Y'all don't see that he's lying? No, you're in love. You fell in love. Okay. Men get starstruck too, but men primarily get starstruck by other men. They get starstruck by them. And you wouldn't think that, but they tend to get starstruck by other men. They probably rarely get starstruck by a woman. If anything, it's like, wow, I really, really want to, I want to pump her. You know what I'm saying? But I don't think they get starstruck because they don't see women as greater than they or greater than them. So as a result, you can't be starstruck by somebody who's not a star. But another man is a star to him if that man has achieved more than he has. Men get starstruck too. So this is why I believe you see so many gangs that are primarily men. Yes, there are female gangs, but primarily gangs are going to be men, composed of men. They have this deep, strong need for belonging to the group. And as a result, that makes them very gullible, very impressionable, very suggestible, programmable, and much more naive than women. Now, this is all just my opinion, but that's what I truly believe. So, for example, you all are aware of the Sick and Dangerous Men series. Let me just pull that thumbnail up real quick so y'all can see it. I'm sure y'all already know, though. Boom. Here it is. Boom. So we've been doing the Sick and Dangerous Men series on the channel. And when you hear them speak online, this particular group that we're talking about, they often lay the blame for everything that happens at the feet of women, everything. And I've even heard them say before that some of them adopt personalities because that's what the ladies like. So, for example, in Black culture, often the Black manosphere will say things like, well, women only want you if you're a thug. If you're a thug, that's the only way she's going to talk to you. So we had to do that to attract you guys. So what does that sound like? That's a follower. Do you understand that that's a follower? If you say to me, I'm only dressing and acting like a thug because that's what I believe you like, that means you do what I say, basically. You're a follower, and that would make me your leader. So In other words, they're not using their own personalities, but rather they're using a borrowed personality to impress someone else. That is a sign that someone is susceptible to the influence of another. And they have this deep fear of rejection that essentially causes them to take on any personality they believe will lead to acceptance. So, in other words, let's say he's kind of a nerd by nature, you're a nerd by nature, you like reading or whatever it is nerds like, you like it, you're a nerd by nature. But the girls that you're attracted to don't seem to like nerds, they like thugs. So instead of you staying your nerdy self and being true to who you are, you adopt a thug personality in order to attract the women that you want. That is a follower. So that's what I mean by they kind of don't they're very susceptible to whatever the crowd wants. Whatever the crowd wants, they'll do it. That's a follower, and that is someone who is very, very prone to influence. The chat says that's a phony. It is though. It is. Chat says, yes, women are more skeptical, I think. We're used to people trying to bamboozle us. We're always watching for it. Chat says, yes, when women do that, we call them pick-me's. Absolutely. They're essentially male pick-me's. And I can't tell y'all how rare it is for people to feel comfortable being themselves. I was thinking about this the other day. Society will accept pretty much anything else about you except who you truly are. And here's what I mean by that. If you identify as someone who likes the same sex, we accept that. If you identify as someone who is not the gender that you were assigned at birth, we accept that. If you worship a different religion, culture, ethnicity, we accept all that. We accept everything but who you really are. So what I mean by that is, okay, you might be someone who likes the same sex, but you also might be an introvert. It's like, nope, not allowed to be an introvert. It's like you might be someone who identifies as a gender that you were not born as. That's fine, but you still need to come to happy hour. Do you see what I'm saying? Is that making sense? Let me see if I can think of another example. Maybe you like to color your hair all kinds of different color, crazy colors, non-traditional colors. And that's you. We accept that. But you need to say yes whenever I ask you to do something. Like, in other words, I don't accept your boundaries. I don't accept your no's, your yeses and your no's. You basically need to do whatever I want you to do, but be yourself though. I hope that makes sense because it makes perfect sense in my head, but I don't know if I'm communicating it well. You can be whoever you are as long as you do what I want you to do. Does that make sense? So it's like they will accept anything else about you but who you truly are. Anything else about you but who you actually really are. It sounds like it's not making sense, but I feel like it is at the same time. So yeah, like you're not allowed for, I mean, even down to like pets, which I think is weird. And we talked about this many times. You know, you can worship rocks and they will accept your worship of rocks. But you better have the type of pet that they like and the type of pet that they approve of, you know? Or lately, the hateful SOBs are on like they just don't like animals anymore because the latest threat is you're going to die alone with the dog. So it used to be that you were going to die alone with a cat or multiple cats. So I guess they got off the cat's back and now they're on to dogs. They just don't like animals, period. So again, you can be whoever you are, but I need you to do what I want you to do. So anyway, I digress. So all of these reasons are why I call them the lost army. They are roaming around looking for acceptance, belonging, and most important, they are looking for a commander primarily to lead them into battle. Absolutely. The chat says you can like the same sex, but being neurodivergent, nope. Don't be gifted. Oh man, don't you be gifted. Don't be gifted. Don't be that. That's exactly what it is. Oh my God, you just gave me an epiphany. We will accept all outward expressions of yourself. It's the inward expressions of you that we do not accept, which would be things like neurodivergence and personality, things like that. We accept all of your outward expressions of yourself. It's the internal expressions that we do not accept, primarily because they can't see them. They can only see the end result of them, but they can't see it, so they can't accept it. Chat says, be whoever you are, as long as you're still a willing slave without a core personality. Nail on head. Boom. Be whoever you are, as long as you're still a willing slave without a core personality. Exactly. We don't care how you dress up. We don't care who you love. We don't care how you want to live your life. But internally, you have to be kind of a blank slate for us. That's exactly what it is. Man. And that's exactly how it goes. It says, I tried to be myself at work. I got fired. That's how it goes. Because again, we accept all external expressions of yourself, but your internal self belongs to us. Cults, okay? So, with that in mind, they're roaming around looking for acceptance, belonging, and a commander, primarily to lead them into battle. Yes, it's a very shallow acceptance. Yes. The acceptance of you is shallow. It's shallow. How deep? So, with that in mind, with all that in mind, I'm building up to something here. With all that in mind, again, keeping in mind the topic is essentially what is happening to the young men in this country. This is the issue they don't want to discuss. They'll discuss everything but the primary suspects, who tend to be young men. What is driving young men to do this? And as the senator asked before he went off the deep end, why is our culture suddenly producing so many young men who want to murder innocent people? So we are in the process of answering that question right now. So here's the other part of what they don't want to talk about. They don't want to talk about what is essentially a worldwide male cult. And I believe the worst of it is here in America. I do believe that's up for debate, because in other parts of the world, like, women are still severely oppressed, can't even go outside showing any part of their body other than their eyes, type oppressed, you know, and other things that I won't mention for the sake of the algorithm. So some would say that those men are worse. But the reason I think you're worse in America is because you actually have the opportunity to be better and you choose not to. Like, when you compare the rhetoric coming out of people like the Manosphere and things like that, they really sound no different than the Taliban. If you were to compare the two side by side and do one of those exercises where you have to place the phrase with who said it, you would get it all mixed up, because it's pretty much the same ideology. But it's a worldwide cult. It's a male cult. Some would call it the patriarchy. I don't know that I would necessarily give it that label, because I think it's actually worse than the patriarchy, what we're dealing with. And maybe it is. Maybe this just is the patriarchy that I'm describing. But again, I feel like it's actually worse than that. I feel like it's worse because among the top rules for this cult is you never blame the man and you never accuse the man. The man is perfect. Men do nothing wrong, is essentially the sentiment. Men are perfect. Men do nothing wrong. Period. So anything that happens, well, did a man do it? Yes. Well, some woman made him do that because men are perfect and men do nothing wrong. So I do believe it's the worst in America, and I believe it's getting worse and worse and worse by the day. There is this cult that is forming. It is primarily shaped and fueled right now by members of the Manosphere who are very open and vocal. But there's also conversations that happen behind closed doors that never make it online to the internet. Speaking of the Manosphere, one of them just got arrested over in Romania, and his name escapes me. And I don't know where I put that article, but he got arrested for brought up on human trafficking charges. And he came out with many videos saying that he likes Romania because they don't really believe grape accusations or SA accusations. They don't really believe them or pursue them because men are perfect and men don't do anything wrong. So because men are perfect and men don't do anything wrong, those women are obviously lying. So he likes it over there because they're very lax on men. They don't really hold men accountable for issues like that. But he just got arrested on human trafficking, and I do have the article somewhere, just not right in front of me. And his name is like super familiar, but it escapes me at the moment. So this cult is infecting young men, and the way that it infects them is very insidious. And I do believe the internet is the primary vehicle for it. I believe the internet is radicalizing them by the day. And they're radicalizing them in chat rooms, on videos, um, and however else they communicate and connect with other people. They typically don't have any voice in the room that's challenging the ideas that they're sharing with each other. And anytime that voice does pop up and pop out, they essentially work to suppress it and stomp it out and snuff it out. So you snuff out all dissent. That is a cult. Anyone who speaks against or starts to question what we're talking about here, they got to go. They get kicked out. They typically get called a simp. So simps get kicked out of this cult. And the person may not actually even be a simp. They just might actually be asking questions like, so none of y'all have ever loved a woman before? They're like, there's no such thing as love. Women just want money. You're a simp. Get out of here. It's like, well, I felt love before. You never been in love before, man? There's no such thing as love. Love is a fabrication of the Western society and feminism and an establishment to take all your money from marriage and divorce. You're a simp. Just get out of here, man. It's funny that you say teenagers because where did I write it? I wrote it somewhere in here. Or maybe I wrote it down in my mind. I thought I had written somewhere that it's almost like oh, I know where I put it. It's on an upcoming show. But it's almost like we're dealing with overgrown teenagers that never grew up. We're dealing with teenage boys who never crossed over. And I guess the bigger question is why, though? Why didn't their mind ever cross over? Even like when they go on to college and stuff, some of their minds never actually like cross over into adulthood. Is it because we don't do any rites of passage anymore? Like, what is the reason? What is the cause for this? Because if we want to use one of their excuses, fatherlessness, okay, you might have had no father, but you're still surrounded by men. Men are everywhere. So it's kind of like, okay, you maybe didn't have a father, but do you have uncles, brothers, cousins, nephews, friends, coaches, teachers? I know they don't really go to church as much anymore, but pastors, a mentor, a business leader. No other man was somebody that you could have just looked up to and said, okay, well, I'll just kind of copy him since I didn't have a dad. But my point is, men are everywhere. So what has caused this lack of crossover into mature thinking? And I think that's going to be like my big reason number 2. We have failed to teach people how to think their ways out of ridiculous conclusions. Some might call that critical thinking, but I think it might actually be called something else. I don't have a name for it, but basically, when you feel yourself starting to get ridiculous, you're able to, number one, recognize that you're being ridiculous, and you're able to sort of back your way out of that. You're able to kind of talk your way back to reality. It's like they do not have the ability to do that, y'all. So the question on the table this evening, why are all these mass shootings increasing? Because these men have no way to talk themselves back to reality. Introspection. Chat says introspection. No introspection whatsoever. Chat says arrested development. Absolutely. And responsibility. Absolutely. I don't know what to call that. I think it needs a term. Again, some might call it critical thinking, but I think it's actually different from critical thinking. It's the ability to logically work your way out of some mental problem, real or imagined. Real or imagined. Like, for example, breakups. Breakups, I think, are a perfect example. You're dating someone, then you break up. As painful as it might be, as unfair as the breakup might be, and there might even be some drama and all kinds of stuff going on. Like, if someone has broken up with you, ultimately, the conclusion you're supposed to be able to work your way back to is they have the right to be with who they want to be with, no matter how much that hurts. And that's another thing. They don't, I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. They don't know how to accept that sometimes life hurts, man. Sometimes life hurts. Sometimes it hurts bad. Sometimes it's going to make you want to cry. That's how life can be. But it's almost like nobody ever told them, hey, son, sometimes life is going to hurt so bad you're going to want to cry. And maybe you should just go ahead and cry. Like, they don't know how to deal with that. I think women do. Like, I think women, especially when it comes to things like breakups, like, women will cry for weeks. Now, of course, they don't believe that. They think that we're just on the hunt and on the prowl and on to the next man with a bigger wallet. But the truth of the matter is, she's probably home crying when she wakes up, crying in the shower, getting herself together, going to work, holding it together at work, going home and crying again over the breakup. She's upset. But the thing that makes her different is she accepts the reality that I can't force anyone to be with me or be here or be in this relationship. And as much as it hurts, sometimes life hurts. They have no coping mechanisms. Absolutely. Chat says self-coping. They have no coping mechanisms. Denial of reality. Yes. Says men are taught not to cry. Absolutely. Like, they need to be told, sometimes life is going to hurt. It is not always going to feel good. Now, yes, we're going to try to make it feel good as often as possible, but there are going to be some circumstances in life that is going to hurt. And that's just what it is. That is the reality. They have a tough time dealing with that reality. So I think we have a failure in teaching all people, really, but teaching young men especially, how to mentally work themselves off of the ledge, basically. We did not teach them how to think. We taught them math, we taught them science, some English, we taught them social studies and sports, and then we set them out into the world, but we never actually taught them how to think critically and deeply on a problem and how to reach the appropriate conclusion, which is, you know what? She broke up with me, but she's within her rights. Like, even if she runs off with my best friend, now that might lead to some drama between you and your best friend. But at the end of the day, and was it wrong? Yes. Was it low down and dirty? Yes. Yeah, it was. And you have the right to be super upset about that. but you don't actually have to act on it. You don't have to do anything about being upset. You can cry if you want to in the privacy of your home or in public or whatever. Like, they have a tough time accepting other people's choices regarding them, and that other people have the right to make those choices regarding them. Like, for example, so we don't know what the motivations were behind this most recent shooting at the elementary school. I assume it's either something related to Manosphere ideology or some extreme political ideology. Who knows? But at the end of the day, it boils down to, like, if it's political, if he was upset perhaps about God only knows what, he has to accept that he lives in a country that is open and welcoming to other people. It just is. And if that is not something that you enjoy, then what you do is you get your money up, try to find some sort of career that'll take you to another country that's not very accepting and welcoming to other people, and try to make a life there. And that is more aligned with your belief system. But it's kind of like they have a very tough time accepting what is. And I'm not saying don't try to change the world for the better, but is it really better? They don't have a mechanism to work themselves to that answer. They can do all kinds of math with numbers, but they cannot do people math and human math. And it's just, now that's what I'm interested in. How did that breakdown occur? How did that breakdown and that unique ability occur? The ability to not be able to cope, to live in extreme denial of reality, to think that you can kind of force people into what you want when force is typically never the answer. Because why would you, for example, want to force a girl to be with you? Because that definitely means she doesn't want to be with you. It just means she's only there by force. You want her to be there because she chooses to be. But it's almost like choice is too risky. If I leave it up to choice and if I leave it up to chance, that's too risky. And I don't want to take those kinds of risks, because if it doesn't go the way that I want to, I'll be so devastated I might go act out. It's like they cannot accept ifs, maybes, possibilities. So how that happened, I'm not sure. Again, like someone said earlier, it's almost like a form of arrested development, and it's a form of extreme denial of reality and how reality works. It's almost like they buck up against the very laws of nature. They really do. Okay? So they're not being taught how to think. And note that I didn't say they're not being taught what to think. I'm not trying to teach them what to think, I'm trying to teach them how to think, how to actually do it, how to go from point A to point B to point C to point D to conclusion. Now, they do that, but they often end up in illogical conclusions. So teaching them how to recognize when a conclusion is illogical. This is what's missing in school. Like, this is what needs to be taught. Like, I'm going to present you with this one set of information, and I'm going to give you two different conclusions. Which conclusion is illogical and why? It's like they can't do it. They immediately jump to either the easiest conclusion or the most shallow conclusion or the most simple conclusion. But that deeper thought is just not present. It's very, very interesting. So part of what's interrupting their thought process is that they think in false and entitled ways. So what happens when you feel entitled to something? You feel like you're owed it, like it is owed to you. And when people generally don't get what they are owed, they get angry. If you pay for food and you don't get it, you were owed that food, now you're mad. If you work for a paycheck, you didn't get it, you were owed that paycheck, now you're mad. So anger is the natural next step to entitlement. It really is. Chat says, I was just listening to Boomer Obstinance. Now I'm here. Well, welcome, welcome. And I hope you enjoy Boomer Obstinance. I need to do a follow up to that one. So, when you think in entitled ways and then you don't get what you feel like you're entitled to, it is naturally going to lead to a lot of anger. The problem here is that the things that they think they're owed, they are not owed, but no one seems to have the courage to tell them that. So, one of my biggest gripes with the Manosphere is that they don't really lead them to accurate conclusions, and they tend to install this entitlement, in particular in young men, but it's all across the age bracket at this point. But they install a sense of entitlement in them. And the logic goes a little bit something like this: you're a man, you build things, you make all the money, she wants your money, so you want her to be skinny. What's wrong with that, fellas? I'm a man, I'm bringing in all the money, so I need you to be submissive. What's wrong with that, fellas? I'm a man, I find you attractive, you're only a 4 and I'm like an 8. So you should be grateful that I'm interested in you and you need to give me your phone number so I can take you out on a date. And they're just like, how come it doesn't work that way? So a lot of them actually end up going out, doing everything these men tell them to do. They start working out, which is nothing wrong with working out. We should be healthy and fit as much as we're able. They start working out, they get good jobs, they get their money together. And I'm bothered by the fact that some man on the internet had to tell you to do that. That's crazy. But anyway, and so they basically check off all the boxes, right? Then after they check off the boxes, they think that that qualifies them basically. Like, okay, I'm qualified now. I have a car, I have a place, I'm a man, I have a job. I put on cologne this morning and I took a bath. So what's your problem, lady? You don't want all of this? It's like, well, no, I'm just not attracted to you. You shouldn't say that these days, ladies. Don't say that. That might cause them to spaz. Find a nicer way to decline. I'm serious. But my point is, in your mind, you're thinking, well, it's great that you have all of those things, but honey, I'm just not attracted to you, the person, and I don't have to be. And how could I be? Because if that were the case, if that's all it took, then we would be attracted to every single man who every man who puts on cologne in the morning, brushes his teeth, has a job, a car, and a place to live. Don't you think that would be problematic? They don't believe in human attraction, though. And I just found this article too. His name was, or is, because he's still with us, his name is Andrew Tate. And Romanian police raided the home of, actually, you know what? Since we're here, might as well just show it. Dang, but I can't. I'm going to use it for a different show. But anyway, his name is Andrew Tate. And he got arrested out in Romania. Now, I don't find this man attractive. I really don't. Not based on the picture I'm looking at. I don't think he's cute at all. And to me, it wouldn't matter how much money he had, because in addition to him, just me not finding him physically attractive, his attitude and personality are trash. He has really, really, really low character. So that low character, to me, you're like kissing cousins with a serial killer as far as I'm concerned. And I'm basing this off of everything I heard this man say on this video that I watched of him yesterday. He's a sick puppy, baby. Whoo, that's a sick puppy. I see why he got arrested in Romania. He's a sick puppy. He was saying, among other things, that he thinks the idea of women having a sense of self-defense, like physical self-defense, is ridiculous. He's like, okay, you go to your stupid little self-defense classes and they teach you to knee me in the balls. But if I'm pounding your face with my fist, you kneeing me in the balls isn't going to do much. I'm like, wow. Wow. There's a lot of energy behind that. There's a lot of energy behind that little analogy you just gave there, bud. Like he's irritated that a woman would even think or try to like defend herself. But anyway, I say that to say his character makes him even more unattractive to me. And vice versa, a man with great character may not be the cutest guy in the world in the face, but his character can make him 10 times more attractive. It happens all the time. All the time. It's just so rare. You often don't see it. So anyway, no one has the courage to tell them that they can do all of these things, quote unquote, right. And they're still not necessarily entitled to a relationship, entitled to a specific woman, entitled to sex, entitled to whatever, because it's just not how it works. It's just simply not how it works. It's not. Like there is a consent factor, there's a chance factor. And it's almost like they're trying to override chance. They're trying to override a lot of things, actually. So, in addition to not being owed these things, here's the bigger part of that. No one tells them that none of these things are guaranteed either. Nobody tells them that. So, for example, let's say there's a young man who he's checked off all his check boxes that he feels like a woman should like me because of these reasons. And let's say he goes out every Friday night with his friends. And for 6 months straight, he's gone out and he hasn't met a girl that he likes or that likes him back. So now he's angry. He's like, here I am with all this money and I have a job and a car and a place to live and I smell good and I brushed my teeth this morning. And none of these hoes out here want me because, they're all feminists and gold digging money chasers. When the truth of the matter is, in month 7, he was going to meet the girl that he would fall in love with and marry. So they think that they can override the timing of things. They think that they can override other people's interest. They think that they can override coincidences. Do you know how many people have met and married just on something coincidental? Like they got off on the wrong exit or the wrong stop on the subway train or something. And when they were waiting for the next train to come, they bumped into their future spouse. Like it happens, you guys. Or they go to a friend's wedding and by chance the caterer was just so cute and they just started talking and then he ends up marrying the caterer. You see what I'm saying? From his friend's wedding. Like you had no control over that, my guy. The only thing you can do is show up and be ready, but you have no control over when these things are going to happen. That's why another argument that I hear all the time that I think is so ridiculous, this whole argument that you should be married by a certain age. Honey, some of your husbands and some of your wives are married right now, and you won't have an opportunity to marry them until that relationship ends, they divorce, and you meet them on a coincidence a couple of years from now. Some of your husbands and wives just simply have not moved to your city yet. You haven't met them yet. You don't even know that they exist, and you won't know that they exist until they move to your city. That's a coincidence. Like, the chat says, as if women are not individuals with free will. Oh, right. That only belongs to men. Right. They don't believe in free will. They don't believe in timing, interest, coincidences. They don't believe in fate. And they also don't believe in taking losses either. Some of them do. Some of them accept that a loss will be taken from time to time, but generally they are engaged in loss mitigation at all times, risk mitigation, which is why I think they flip out because they build their whole lives around this one goal. And when it doesn't go exactly how they want it to, when they want it to, they lose it. When again, like for that first example I gave, so he went out for 6 months straight. He didn't meet anybody. He went home angry. He didn't realize he would meet her in month number 7. You see what I mean? This is why it's so important for people to have a life. You need a life. You need a freaking life, man. You have to have a life. You have to have a life that exists outside of work and that exists outside of like dating and relationships and all that. And some people can't even visualize that. They can't even picture what that would look like. Like PTE, how do you have a life outside of work and a life outside of like a social life? It's the life that you have. It's the life that you have right now. It's the life that you're using to listen to this broadcast right now. It's the life that actually already exists. You already have that life. You just fail to acknowledge it, and you fail to honor it as something real and worthy of being paid attention to. So you put everything outside of you, you externalize everything, which is actually a big feature of narcissism. Everything becomes an extension of them. So you externalize so much to the point that you actually have no life. Chat says people lack substance these days and real passions. Absolutely. So, like, good. I'm glad I made a comeback. It says, so right. Outside of those first few minutes, you are on a roll dropping gems. I'm glad I made a comeback. You have no life. Yeah, no life outside of seeking accolades. And it's sad, you guys, because like I'm so passionate about this. And truly, this is what my core channel is about. Permission to exist. That's what it's about. It's about, number one, discovering that like you do have a life and it matters. And you have the right to exist. You have the right to exist with it. You have the right to exist in it. Like, and no one has the right to take that away from you, but people try to all the time. And the people primarily who are trying to take it from you are narcissists. So it creates larger issues also, because when you don't value your life, you tend to not value other people's lives either. And that creates so many of our problems here. So far, let me run down the list just as a quick summary, really quick. So far, the question is, why is our culture producing so many of these young men who want to murder innocent people? Number one, I believe they're incredibly gullible, impressionable, suggestible, and highly programmable. Number two, they're easily influenced and essentially are followers. They're not natural born leaders. They don't know how to lead themselves. They don't know how to stand on their own 2 feet. Number three, there is a cult that is protected at all times. You are not to speak against the man. Men are perfect. Men don't do anything wrong. Number four, they don't really teach them how to think properly, not what to think, but how to think and how to basically walk themselves back to a logical conclusion, not a false one. Number five, they tend to think in very entitled and false ways. And no one has the courage to tell them that you're not entitled to those things, number one, but number two, they're also not guaranteed. No one seems to have the courage to tell these guys that. They tell them, yes, it's guaranteed. If you do this, follow this 6-step process, you're guaranteed to have success with women. And then when they don't, they get mad. But I don't think it's only about women, though. A lot of it centers around women, though. And that's why I said they have no life. You got to have some kind of a life. I feel like the men who are the most successful in general, but the most successful with women, are men who kind of have their own lives. Like, and it makes you interesting and it makes people come to you, basically. Like, you don't have to do much. Like, you have your own thing going on. And it's interesting because it's yours. So, and it's uniquely yours. Like, no one else is going to have your life. But when you don't have a life and you externalize everything, it actually makes you a very, very boring person, incredibly boring. Number six, they try to override natural laws and things like timing, interest, coincidences, fate, and the ability to take a loss in this life every now and then, which does happen. Thank you, Daniel, for the super chat. I appreciate you so much. And I appreciate your support of the channel. Always appreciate it. Chat says it's not just money, it's being self directed. No sense of self direction. This is what is missing, you guys. And for anyone who might know, like, do they teach these things in Boy Scouts? I feel like this is the type of stuff that needs to be taught in Boy Scouts or something similar. Because I don't think sports is getting the job done. I don't think sports is teaching them self direction, teaching them substance. Only thing I feel like sports is teaching them is how to cooperate on a team and how to win and how to work hard towards like a difficult goal, like winning a championship. But I don't think it's actually teaching them the important things in life, like how to think through a problem that's not math. You know what I mean? How to reason, how to accept that sometimes in life, our feelings are going to get hurt and it happens to everyone, and that's okay. How to accept it. You know what I mean? The chat says, I asked my ex the other day when he called, do you have any hobbies? He's almost 60. And he said, yeah, rolling up and smoking. I said, that's a habit, not a hobby. That is a habit and not a hobby. No personal interest, no sincere personal interests. You know what I mean? Like, like I feel like for me, regarding me, it's like an endless well. Like I feel like whoever I ultimately ended up with could never possibly be bored because there is so much on the inside. And so I externalize some of it, but a lot of it is going on in my mind. Like, for example, right now, I'm obsessed with the concept of a scullery. Okay. That term came out of a live stream on Permission to Exist called Signs Your Future Boss is a Complete Nut. And someone in the chat said, she sounds like she needs a scullery made. So I had to look up what that was. Y'all, a scullery is basically a little kitchen behind the kitchen. And OMG, like I'm completely obsessed. I put it on my vision board. I have to have a scullery in my life. If I ever am able to buy a big house and like custom build it, which is a big dream, which is why it's on a vision board, because it's just fantasy at this point. Gotta have a scullery. The scullery has like, oh my God, like two giant sinks in it. It has like these massive prep surfaces. It has shelves and like drying racks for all. Oh my, I can't even talk about it. But that's what I mean by like interests. Like I have interests that have nothing to do with work, friends, social, anything. And it's not that those things aren't important. It's just that I actually have a life. You know what I mean? Thank you. I received that. I'm going to receive that. It says you will get that big house. I'm going to touch this. I'm touching the screen right now and I'm receiving that. Thank you. Thank you. I needed that little bit of encouragement today. Today was rough for me. But here we are. So yeah, so that's what I mean, like no personal interest. So if my husband was like, "Girl, what are you looking up online?" I'm like, "Babe, we got to get a scullery." He's like, "A scullery? What is a scullery?" Then I would sit and I would explain it to him and I would show him pictures. And he'd be like, "Oh yeah, 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 I dig that actually. I could see the benefit of that." But that's just one small example of having a life and interests that have nothing to do with work or like socializing. So a person who's got more going on than meets the eye, like having an actual life. Like, for example, one of the main reasons that I do like to spend a lot of time alone is so I can actually think my thoughts. Like, right, I want a scullery, but without the scullery maid. Okay. Like I need time alone to think my thoughts. I need to be able to think my thoughts. I need I need that. Like that's something that's very, very important to me. But I feel like a person who would have no internal life doesn't really want that. They don't want time alone to think their thoughts. They don't really have any thoughts to think on their own. Just to go deep into thought, like when my thought process is interrupted, I get very upset because it's like I really wanted to finish that thought. You know what I mean? But anyway, the lack of the ability to accept these things that they can't change and accept these natural laws and natural things that they can't override causes them to rage against it and make war with it. Instead of accepting reality and working with reality, they choose to kind of work against reality. So, what should be taught instead of, well, what should be taught, as opposed to what's not being taught? They need to be taught what an identity is and how to have that identity, regardless of what other people think. That is so important. And that doesn't mean violating other people's boundaries. Not what that means at all. It means having the courage to be yourself regardless of what other people think. So if that means, hey, they're all going somewhere tonight and it's supposed to be lit and you don't want to go and you just don't want to go, having the courage to not go and be like, y'all have fun. Tell me how it was. And they're like, why don't you want to go? So I just don't feel like it, man. I'm not into it tonight. I don't have the energy. I don't feel like it. And having the courage to say no and mean it, regardless of what other people think. Oh man, you a party pooper. I don't think they say that, but man, you just gonna sit around at home. Da, da, da. I'm like, yeah, yes, I am. See y'all, see you when you get back. Tell me how it was, having the courage to be that person, having the courage to accept that sometimes people might actually reject you for who you are. And does it suck? Yeah, it sucks. But why would you want to be friends with someone who didn't accept you for who you were anyway, though? You see what I mean? Same goes for work. Same thing goes for work. They need to be taught boundaries, what they are, what their own boundaries are, and what their boundaries are for other people. So a lot of them, when I hear about stories of them getting taken advantage of, say by a woman, when I hear the story, I'm like, he never set any boundaries with this woman. He just kind of agreed to everything. Then when he looked up, she had taken all the money and ran. Like, you got to have boundaries, son. You got to be not afraid to tell her no and mean it, but not be like a psychopath about it. You'd be like, no, the answer is no. You don't have to scream. You don't have to yell. You don't have to get big, mean, and scary. Like, no, I'm not going to do that. No, that's not something I think I'm going to do. No. And sticking to it. And if she gets mad, throws a temper tantrum, oh, well. Oh, well. She threw a temper tantrum. Okay. Nice temper tantrum you got going on there. You look silly. Get up. And having the courage to be that person, having the courage to be like, girl, you look silly. Okay, you're throwing a temper tantrum. All right. Having the courage to let people have their temper tantrum. Now, that's advice for everyone, really, but I think it affects this group the most. Having the courage to let people be mad at you. Then they need to be taught what's truly important in life. Man, this could be a separate show. Currently, and again, going back to the whole point of this whole entire live stream, we don't know what the motivations of this individual were. I don't think they've produced a manifesto yet. So we don't know like what was on their mind, what their particular issues were, but I do know that they were looking at his social media. So hopefully we'll get some answers there. But if it's what I suspect, it tends to center around the inability to get into a relationship of some kind or the inability to have sex. If it's not that, it's some sort of political extremism. But if it is the other, if it's the former, honey, Being in a relationship is wonderful and it's great and it is one of the best parts in life, but it is not the only part. There are other parts to life. You need to explore those. And when the relationship comes, it'll come. You cannot force it. Getting into this relationship. But then again, going back to what I said earlier, maybe we need to encourage them to get in these relationships. But encouragement or not, you still have to have a girl that says yes, a girl that actually agrees to it. You can't force her just because you want to be in a relationship right now. Doesn't mean you can force this woman to be in a relationship with you. She has to agree to it, unless you're looking to hire somebody. And where's the love in that? They truly don't understand what's important in life. And I remember I was watching some true crime show, and it was some horrible crime that this kid committed. I think when he was like 14 or 15, and he got tried in his adult and locked up for life. And they went and interviewed him some years later, and they were like, "Why did you do that?" And he said, "At the time, I just didn't value life." And I just thought that was so powerful. And it really, really stuck with me that this person had introspected in prison, I suppose. And he said, "At the time, I just really didn't value life." Like, y'all, the chat says, they mentioned over and over again in the news how the most recent 18-year-old didn't have a woman in his life like he did, like he didn't even finish high school. Let him do that first. Exactly. Like, can the man finish high school first? Like, can't, like, it leads me to believe that there's just not enough for men to do. But when I think about everything that's available to men, I'm like, how is there not enough for you to do? Because men, in my opinion, have more things that they can do that I would never do. Like, for example, I'm not going to go scuba diving like without like it being like super secure, super safe in like a pool, basically. But like I'm not gonna go scuba cave diving, but men do that all the time. People like dive rivers and go looking for like buried treasures and stuff. That's the stuff men do. Do women do it? I'm sure they do. But primarily that's men out there. Men will hike out into the middle of the wilderness by themselves on purpose just to rough it and just try it out, you know? Men like to go fishing with their bare hands. Men like to go climbing stuff. Men like to build things. They love, that's one of their favorite things, how much they like to build. They like to build things and work on cars. Like I'm not doing any of that. Like I feel like they have so many more things they can do and a lot less to worry about. Like you don't even have a head full of hair that you have to take care of. Like boy, your life should be full. Your life should be full. You don't have any hair that you're managing. You don't. You don't have any hair that you're managing. You don't have a monthly cycle that you have to tend to every single month. So your time is dramatically freed up. And maybe, oh my God, maybe that's the problem, y'all. They have too much free time on their hands. See, women are preoccupied. We're preoccupied with just being women, damn it. Our hair, makeup for those of us who wear makeup, nails for those of us who wear nail, clothes, got to manage our monthly, got to get a new bra. Like, oh my God, just being a woman is kind of annoying. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of upkeep. You you can just shave it off and go, honey, with some shorts and some flip-flops and you're done. You don't even have to put on a bra. Maybe that's the problem. Your life isn't hard enough. That might be the actual that might be the problem. That might actually be the problem, y'all. Their lives aren't hard enough. They're not contending with anything on a daily basis. They're not worried about their eyebrows. I mean, most of them aren't. That's the problem. They just wake up. They just wake up ready and raring to go, and they got all this extra free time, and they don't know what to do with it. Idle hands. Wow. The chat says idle hands. They got idle hands. That's the problem. That's why they used to put y'all on them farms, honey, and make you work. They used to make you tend to the horses, the cattle, the chicken coop. Go plow this, pluck that, harvest this. That's what you needed. That's what your spirit needed. Your spirit needed all that work. Now they've sat you behind these computers and they absolutely ruined you guys. I think that's the problem, y'all. They got too much free time on their hands. They're bored. Maybe they're just bored. Says these incels have too much energy and no chronic illnesses. As a nurse, a chronic illness will humble you down. There it is. Perfect health and too much energy. Perfect health, too much energy, and too much free time. And don't know what to do with it, though. It's incredible. Like I said to myself, if I ever had a lot of money and became very philanthropic, I would start something in the city and then expand it out countrywide, where I would basically recruit young men who I see just standing around doing nothing. And basically, they would become my little trash pickup crew. And I would take them in a van and we would go from place to place to place, just picking up trash in the city, bagging it up, tagging it up, put them on some snake boots, some gloves. You know what I mean? Pay them decent, you know, and give them something to do. Is a little bit dangerous. It's slightly dangerous. We're on the side of the road, you know. You don't ever know what you're really going to find. But on top of that, they're making money, and like preoccupy them in that way. Like give them something useful to do where they can see the end result of their hard work and then get some money for it. And it's kind of hard, it's a little bit labor intensive, might be hot. You know what I'm saying? Again, there's the danger factor of all the cars whizzing by. They're going to love that. Like, no, not the white windowless van. The van will have windows, okay? Absolutely. It says getting dressed, hair dried and done, makeup. There is no just take a shower for us. Like it's a whole activity. It's a whole thing. It's very involved. But, give them something to do and where they can also earn money for it too though. Because I think that's important for them to feel like they're also earning their way in life. And yeah, it's a small job. They'll keep it for a few weeks, few months, then move on to something else. But it kept them off the streets. Well, they're technically on the streets, but you get my point. It kept them from just loitering around, hanging around, doing nothing. Kept them busy. It was probably fun. They were cracking jokes, listening to music, picking up the trash. But that might make them feel like a chain gang. And I don't want them to feel like a chain gang. I want them to have some purpose behind it. Anyway, I'm just thinking out loud, okay? Um, they need to be taught what real friends are. I think that's important. I think so many of them have been lied to and told essentially that a real friend is someone who never checks you, never holds you accountable, lets you get away with pretty much anything, um, never critiques you, never has anything bad to say about you. And of course, you don't want your friends just bashing you all the time and giving you negative feedback all the time. But what I'm saying is, they've been taught that a friend is someone who looks the other way all the time. And that's really not a real friend. They need to know who their real friends are and how to recognize them. I don't think they do. I think the thought process is if you grew up near me, then we're friends, and it takes a lot for them to turn on each other. It really does. And not that I want them out here turning on each other. I'm just saying that they don't see, again, going back to what I was saying earlier, they're very easily scammed. So they don't even see when their friend is a scammer. I was watching somebody's live stream the other day, some guy, and he was talking about how Kevin Samuels is a scammer or was a scammer rather, and how he managed to scam all these men. And then he kind of got on the topic of scammers and scamming. And he was like, how did he phrase it? He said something to the effect of, Some of my best friends are scammers. And I'm like, what? Like, what? Then does that mean that you're a scammer too? Or you're just okay with their scamming? Like, eh, I wish I knew the exact quote, but that's basically what he said. He said, some of my best friends are scammers. I'm like, Chat says Mike Tyson says a real friend will confront you, and a person who just goes along with all your bullshit is not a friend at all. They're really not. And I think that's a societal issue as well, that they've trained us to believe that if anyone gives you any feedback or critique whatsoever, they are your enemy and you need to cut it off with them, and to hell with them, basically, when that might have been the only person that ever actually bothered to tell you the truth. And it might have been a hard truth, but it might have been the only person who bothered to tell you the truth, or at least tried to tell you the truth. Or maybe it wasn't even the truth. Maybe it was just the truth as they saw it, but they had the courage to speak up and tell you, and you castrated them for it. So now everyone else that's left is going to go, well, I'll never give them any feedback ever again. You know, like, it's crazy. Like, society has gone nuts in that respect. You cannot tell people the truth. For example, when we had that big YouTube glitch, like a week ago, something like that, when I first wrote in, they basically were like, they gave me a very canned, generic response. And I could tell that they just thought the issue was singular, like, oh, it's only happening to you. And it's like, no, this is weird. You need to look into it. It wasn't until dozens, if not hundreds of other people started contacting them saying, hey, y'all force privated our videos for no reason. What's up? For them to finally go, oh, something is wrong here. Then they had to go in and fix it. And my point of bringing that example is YouTube behaved like that friend who brings you truth that you've heard for the first time. Like, just because no one else has ever said it before doesn't mean it's not true. This just means it's the first time you heard it. But as a society, and corporations are very guilty of this, they've been trained to just simply dismiss you outright. If you have a problem, it's your problem alone, nobody else's. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm perfect. Nothing wrong. There is nothing wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with what has happened here. Oh, wait, what? Thousands of other people are having the same issue? Oh, maybe we have a glitch. Let me see. Oh, we do have a glitch. It's like, yeah. And I was among some of the first people to tell you that. But because it wasn't like hundreds of people reaching out to you, you didn't believe it. So we have to learn when someone is bringing you real, accurate information and when they're just, just being whatever, hater or whatever. But even the haters contain valuable information, honey. You have to scan all information. Scan it all, because sometimes there's some valuable information in there. There really is. For example, there's a lady, there's a lady on YouTube. I'm not going to shout her out though. But I was watching her live stream the other day, and her phone, which I think is one of those, the phones that go, hello, Moto. I don't know what those are. Motorola's? I don't know. But it's very loud and very Androidy sounding. Well, her phone was right next to the microphone. And every time I guess somebody would send her a Cash App, it would go, hello, Moto. And it was so aggravating, y'all, because she was really getting into the zone of what she was talking about. And I like to focus on what I'm listening to. And I wanted so badly to put in the comments, on future live streams, would you consider silencing your ringtone so we can hear what you're saying? Now, that is not a critique. That's not an insult. That's actually would have been me saying to her, I so badly want to hear what you're saying that I would prefer there be no interruptions. But guess what, guys? I didn't even bother to leave the comment. It is a Motorola. Okay. I didn't even bother to leave the comment. You know why? because I can just tell by the way she acts in general that it wouldn't be well received. And she actually strikes me as the type of person who would make it worse. So if I were to leave that comment, hey, love your video, would you mind silencing your ringtone so we can hear what you're saying? Which is a very reasonable request. And it's also a compliment. It's somebody saying to you, I want to hear what you're saying. And I don't want any outside interference. But she's the type of person I can just tell she can't take feedback. And if I left that, she would probably be like, don't come to my channel telling me what to turn off and what to turn on and on my phone and my house on the bill that I pay for. And she would probably turn the ringtone up and leave it louder and put it right by the microphone. That's the type of childishness that we're dealing with in our society. Now, would she do that for real? I don't know. But that's what she strikes me as. So I didn't even bother you guys. You know what I did? I just clicked off the video, which is sad because, okay, my one view lost is not going to affect her channel that much. But still, that's one solid view, one extra view she could have had. That's more ad revenue for her, more watch time, more everything. But because I just know she wouldn't take it well, I just said, you know what, forget it. Forget it. But that's the type of stuff that people need to learn how to actually like handle and take. And that's the type of stuff that real friends will tell you. Like, girl, turn off your ringtone when you're doing your show. Like when my alarm accidentally goes off, I feel really bad. I cease the alarm and then I try to make sure I don't have any others set to go off because I know that that's very, very annoying. You know what I mean? Anyway, don't get me started on YouTubers and feedback, honey. Oh my God. Anyway, they need to be taught that it's okay to be alone sometimes or all of the time. You do not have to be with another person 24/7. Being with other people does not give you value. They need to be taught that desperately. I know some people prefer company more than others, but your sense of self-worth and value should not ride on how many people are around you at all times. They need to know that it is okay to be alone sometimes. It's okay. You technically are alone all the time, but that's a little bit too deep. We touched on that in a live stream on this channel called Singularity. Check that out. Or The Greatest Fear on Earth, Singularity is the name of that live stream. Your very existence should not, your sense of worth in your existence should not depend on who you are surrounded by, because that can change. And when it changes, then are you less worthy than you were before? I don't think your value has changed at all. But a lot of them feel like I must have someone hugged up next to me, almost like a leech. I must be leeched onto someone to have value. And if I don't, I'm valueless. Like, man, like the insecurity is so deep, so deep. It's almost incurable. But I believe it is curable with the right set of questions and with the right thought process. You can cure it. But their sense of being nothing at all is so profound that it's almost incurable. There's almost no fix for it. Like, how do you convince a person? How do you convince a person your value is not dependent on how many people you're surrounded by? Chat says, but why would you have your phone next to a microphone? I record on and upload to my Instagram, but I set my phone to do not disturb so I can record. I couldn't tell you. I think it's a sign of some severe head injury or something, because it's like, but you know what it really is a sign of? To me, it's a sign that they don't watch their own shows. I can always tell. I can tell when a YouTuber does not watch their own content. They just record it, they do it, they put it out there, they move on to the next one. But you can tell that they don't actually consume their own content. Because if they did, they would have jumped when that phone went off the first time. Like I was so deep in thought about what she was saying and listening so intently that when that thing went, brrr, brrr, hello, Moto, like I jumped, like it startled me. And it kind of upset me a little bit because I was in deep thought regarding what was being shared. And I was like, oh God, whew. I was like, well, it was probably just that one time. She'll turn the ringer off because it does happen. Sometimes you just forget that it's on, but it just kept happening. And it was louder than her. So I'm like, at what point is anyone in her audience going to tell her, girl, turn the ringtone off so we can hear you? She didn't, though. She left it on the whole time, the whole entire time. It's like, you don't watch your own content because if you did, you would end that immediately. And she did it on more than one video because I thought, okay, this is a fluke. She just forgot. She got lost in thought. She won't do it again. She did it on 2 or 3 other video. I just stopped watching because I just can't take it. Like, please, please care about your sound quality. Please. Anyway, and then finally, they need to be taught how to lose sometimes, how to take the L. In life, sometimes you're going to have to take an L. And it's okay, and it happens, and it doesn't make you a terrible person because sometimes we win and sometimes we lose. But much like the greedy corporations that have taken us over as of late, they basically are trying to set up situations where they never lose. And in setting up a situation where you never lose, you basically create imbalance, basically. Like you are supposed to lose sometimes. You're supposed to have a fiscal year that didn't do better than the year before. Like it happens. Like the myth of infinite growth is real. And it's the same thought process like, I can't lose, I can't lose, I can't lose, I can't lose. I think even gamblers know that they're going to lose sometimes. Even the gamblers know that. So they need to know that sometimes you're going to lose in this life. So these are the things that need to be taught in replacement. They need to be taught what an identity is and how to have one, regardless of what other people think. They need to be taught boundaries. They need to be taught what's truly important in life. They need to be taught what real friends are. They need to be taught that it is okay to be alone sometimes or all the time, that you don't have to have someone hanging off of you 24/7. And they need to be taught how to lose sometimes, how to take a loss, how to take the L and keep on moving and use it as some sort of teaching tool for the future. That's what they need to be taught. So, oh, thank you. Chat says, PTE, you'd be a great mother. Thank you. I always thought I might be, but I don't think I'll ever get to test it out. I don't think I'll ever get to test it out. So, I guess this is my attempt at mothering the world, I guess, or just mentoring the world, like trying to, and I really don't know where this comes from. Like, I think about that all the time. Like, who taught me this? Because I can't explicitly think of any explicit training coming out of either one of my parents. But I think my dad taught me to be this way, honestly. Because he is always the one, or was always the one who like he I feel like kind of taught permission to exist without teaching it. So for example, like I'm trying to think of a simple example. Like like let's say I had the ability to drive to the grocery store or something and I'm like, "Oh man, we're out of milk and I really wanted some cereal." And probably say, "Well, dart on up to the grocery store and get some milk. Here's some money." He'd probably offer me $5 or however much milk was. And it's almost like me saying something like, "Man, I don't feel like going to the store." And he would probably say something like, "Well, I guess you don't want no cereal." Like, that's kind of like, you see what I mean? Like, nobody's mad, nobody's upset. Like, I presented a problem. "Man, I want some cereal, but we don't have any milk." And he's like, "Okay, we'll dart to the store and get some." "Oh man, I don't feel like going to the store." And he said, "Well, guess you don't feel like having any cereal." You see what I mean? So, like, it's kind of hard to explain, but that's the easiest way that I could describe it to you. It's kind of like teaching that you have options. So he taught me that I have an option. Hey, you can go to the grocery store. And he probably would have even at the time offered to give me the money for it, you know? So you have options, you got resources, you have a way to get there. So it's almost like teaching you what's available and in front of you. But oh, you don't feel like going up there? Then I guess you don't feel like having any cereal. Like it's very simple. Like life is not complicated. And I wish I could think of like a real one. That's not a real example, but that's kind of an illustration of the principle. He is funny. He's very funny. They both are. My parents are a trip. But that's kind of like how, you know what I mean? Like no one's hurt. Like you're not hurt. I'm not hurt. You said you wanted cereal. Here are your options. Oh, you don't want to go get it? Well, I guess you don't want cereal. Like, period. Like, yeah, it's like connecting the dots. Yeah, I can't explain it. But I guess that's how I learned it. I don't know. I don't know where it came from, but somehow a strong sense of self was installed into me. And it's been there pretty much my whole entire life as far as I can remember back. So I work hard to try to help people, other people establish that sense of self in themselves. I really do because our society works so hard to strip it away from us. So, with all of that, let's wrap all this up. I'm going to summarize. We're going to get out of here. These recent shootings, the media is going to keep you in a constant circular fight in order to prevent you from looking at the real issue. And I believe part of the reason they do that is they don't have the skill, will, or ability to actually fix this issue because it is complex. Like everything we just went through is kind of complex. And it would take a little while to really get it articulated in a way that could be digestible by the masses, I think. To be able to like articulate what's missing, what's needed, what should be happening instead of what is happening, that would take a while. And they just don't have any interest in doing that. Um, our society is currently, the way it's running is completely broken, and it will continue to produce psychopaths like these. So please don't think this is going to be the last time you see something like this. But primarily, it's because of these breakdowns in logic that we just got through going through. So, on top of all of that, big tech does not want to own its role in mass producing these psychopaths because that's exactly what they're doing. They're creating echo chambers for them. And so, as long as that's okay, it's going to keep happening. Because notice this wasn't really happening when the internet wasn't around. When did Columbine happen? When was Columbine? Right at the cusp. Columbine happened April 20th, 1999. So right as all of this was starting up is when Columbine happened. Okay. So, and then it's only gotten worse from there because basically they can go get themselves indoctrinated in one day. So there is lots of responsibility to go around. But obviously, the greatest responsibility lies with the perpetrators of these crimes. I don't think, well, let me not say that because I'm trying not to be divisive tonight. I don't think the solutions that are being put forward currently in mainstream media, I don't think either one of them is going to work. I don't think trying to ban guns is going to work. And I also don't think this quote unquote focus on mental health care will work, mainly because they don't know what's broken. They don't understand what's actually broken. So until you understand what's actually broken, you cannot fix it. You can't. Like, do I believe in sensible gun control measures? Sure. But am I going to give up mine? No. It's the wild, wild west out here. Are you crazy? It's a jungle out here. Okay. It's an absolute jungle out here. And in many ways and on many days, I feel like there really is no true protection for us these days. Women is who I'm speaking of. Like women, we are kind of vulnerable a little bit out here these days. Some might say we've always been vulnerable. A woman has always been vulnerable, and that's probably true, but the depravity is what's making us a little bit more vulnerable these days. They're very depraved these days. So, I don't think that's the answer. I think the question that you need to be asking is, what series of thoughts led up to this person committing this crime? What series of thoughts? Not what is their mental health, because um mental health implies that you have no control over it. So if you're mentally ill, that implies that you can be cured. Someone who is sick can be cured, yes? But if you're not mentally ill, you just have a tendency to make a series of wrong choices and a series of wrong logical conclusions. Well, excuse me, a series of thoughts that lead to wrong logical conclusions. That is the problem. So we have to explore the thought process that led up to something, because I promise you that's where your answer is. That is where your answer is. What series of thoughts led you to this? And a lot of times it'll sound something like, well, feminism destroyed the West and women don't want to be in relationships and families anymore because they're sluts and hoes and they like Chads and Tyrones and they just want a man that has all of the most money and everything. And I have a little bit of money, but not that much money. But that doesn't mean that I'm a bad person. And people should love me and accept me for who I am. And I was in love with this girl named Pam and she liked me and everything. But then Jason came and he had all these stupid muscles or whatever. And she's so stupid and she's a whore and she went with him. And now she has a child by him and she's not even married to him. And I'm like, I would have given you marriage and a life and a house and everything. And I would have put you in it, but you didn't want that. So now you wanted to chase the bad boy, and that's what you get. Ha 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 ha, you stupid slut. And I just kind of felt like women just are super entitled and they're never held accountable for anything and they're not responsible for anything that they do. And so I just wanted to show them who's in charge and that men are alpha and that men are dominant and that men are leaders of society and that we control everything and that she needs to know that. So I just wanted to put some of them in their place. So that's what you will find. So if you can find someone who can literally hear all that and walk him back from his conclusion, you can bring an end to this stuff. You say, so you wanted to put women in their place. Well, yeah. And you decided to do that by shooting up the place. Well, yeah. And what did that accomplish? Well, they're not alive anymore. No, they're not. But did they get put in their place? Well, yeah. No, they didn't. Because for them to be put in their place, they'd have to still be alive. So, and just literally just walking them back step by step from their inaccurate conclusion. You have to fix the way these boys think. You absolutely have to fix the way that they think. Until you do, you will continue to see crimes like these. They are crimes born out of a mind that does not know how to process thoughts correctly. And a mind that has more than likely been incredibly and deeply influenced by other people who don't think correctly. Goofy MFers, man. Goofies who really shouldn't be online, not because I don't believe in free speech, because I do. The reason they should not be online is because they make people mentally ill and they make them mentally unstable. They actually teach them things that lead them to mental instability. For example, they have a tendency to teach contradictions. So, an example of those contradictions that they will teach men that women are hypergamous, meaning she's always seeking the next man with the most money, which implies that a woman can't possibly ever actually love him. But then we'll turn around and preach marriage and family. Marriage and family to who, honey? You just said women are hypergamous and they only chase men with money. But you think those same women would want marriage? Or my favorite, they'll teach men not to date like single mothers and things like that, but they will highly encourage these men to sleep with single mothers. They'll say things like single mothers are only for sleeping with guys, don't get in relationships with them. But in the process of all that sleeping with single mothers, they tend to create new children, then turn around and complain about child support, or turn around and complain that women aren't traditional and don't want to get married anymore and have kids by different men, but you are literally the same man who laid down with her to make the baby. So when I say they shouldn't be online, the reason I feel they shouldn't be there is because they teach people to think in circles. They teach people to think in a very shallow way, and they teach contradictions that have no choice but to drive someone crazy because they don't have any exit ramp. There is no exit ramp in the thought process. It just goes around and around and around and around until they get road rage and they lash out. Imagine driving around in circles for hours and you can't get off and you can't find your destination and you don't know where you are or where you're going, but you do know that you keep going in circles. Yeah, that's what they're teaching. They're making these men unhinged. And because these men don't have anything of substance to hold on to in their mind, they just take it, they run with it, and then they go do silly stuff like what we saw at the school, like what we saw at the grocery store, and like what we saw on the subway, and every other incident in between. So, these are all of my thoughts on the situation that has taken place. And I'm not going to read your comments tonight, mainly because my voice is starting to fail me. So I have to go now and drink some water and kind of recover my voice and things like that. But I appreciate every single one of you for being here. You guys know one of my favorite things to do is go back and read the chat. And I know there are some good comments in here tonight, but literally my voice is like crapping out on me as we speak. So I look forward to actually reading. The chat says, "What did I walk in on?" That's exactly how they sound, PTE. Scary. Yeah, that's how they sound. They're insane. I could do more. I could do others too. Other crazy lines of thoughts that they get into. I could do that. Maybe we should do that for fun one day. Y'all give me the prompt and then I'll respond. Oh my God, I think that would be so much fun. On a separate night, I'm going to have you guys give me the prompt and I'm going to respond like one of them. And I think that that would be a lot of fun to be had and very educational as well. So, for those of you who do read the live chat, do know that the live chat may not appear for like 12, sometimes almost 24 hours after the show has uploaded. I have no control over it, but I just wanted you to know. So, if you do go looking for it and it's not there, it will appear eventually. And I look forward to that too, because that's when I actually get to go back and read your comments as well. So thank you everyone for being here tonight. I hope you enjoyed this topic. I hope that it was insightful. And I do hope to do probably one more show before the month is out, probably on PTE. So with that, have a wonderful evening and a good night. And we will talk again very, very soon, okay?